Tiny Tree people, what's going on? Back at it for some more fun with this Fraser Fir. In this video, I'm going to make a cut right about in here and remove the entire upper half of the canopy on this tree in an attempt to compress the image and make this continue to look more like a bonsai. The remaining stump that's left over in here, I'm going to be doing some carving to try and create some interesting deadwood to add to the image of the tree. Get to use some power tools in this one, so it should be interesting. Let's give it a spin. Fraser Fir, brief history on this tree. Was inspired by Ryan Neal's Christmas time-ish video on styling a Grand Fir nursery stock, very normal tree, into something of course beautiful because it's Ryan. And I think that video is still out there for free, so I would go check it out. I think it's called Creating a Bonsai. It's on Mirai Live's subscription on YouTube. Highly recommend. And I've watched that probably 5 times. And it was in the middle of winter near Christmas, so I got antsy and went out to a local nursery and said, I'm going to do the same thing. Fraser Fir, similar tree. This tree, when I bought it, was just straight up, right? Very straight trunk, just like this, with a full canopy. And so I dug into a couple of them at the nursery and thought this one had the most interesting root flare, and you can see it does down here. It's even better below the soil line with a big push off to the right. So the first thing I did with this tree is I repotted it. I think that was 3 years ago, into this big old growing container, and I changed the planting angle, slanting it much more to the right to follow that root flare. I've tried to pick a couple of shoots, which you'll be able to see better once I remove a few of these lower branches, to be the future trunk line of this tree, right? I'm not going to keep this ramrod straight move all the way over to the right. Someone with a better eye, like a Ryan or a true artist, might be able to work with this and make it really asymmetrical and radical off to the right, but this reflects where I was at earlier, right, 4 years ago in my bonsai journey, and the fact that, hey, I thought I've got to have a move back to the left. And you can imagine my trunk line coming up this way. So that's the tree within the tree, but I need to remove all this foliage because it's highest on the tree, apically dominant, and you can tell just looking at it that this area is prioritized by the tree from an energy perspective. And I kept all this on. I've been slowly nibbling away at it to give this plenty of light, my future canopy. But it's done its job. It's got it through the repot. It's nice and healthy. And now I want to make a cut here so the tree stops feeding resources to this upper section and focuses in on this canopy. So this little mini chainsaw is what I'm going to be using to make this cut on this tree. Nice little purchase from Amazon. And by the way, I am going to wear eye protection. Always got to be safe. So I only get one shot at this. I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to grab onto this upper section of the trunk. I'm going to pick my spot and we're going to go for it. There we go. What a great tool. All right. Looking radically different already. Now let's get the die grinder out and I'll try and zoom in on the carving without getting shrapnel all over the camera. And we'll see how these new bits do. Well, rookie mistake not putting towels down for all of the sawdust that came off during that carving. It's coming down here like snow, but pretty happy with how the deadwood is shaping up so far. I wanted it to be tapered. I wanted it to be out and then up slightly, and I think I've accomplished that to an extent. Really impressed with this cut saw bit. It just removed a ton of material in short order, as you saw. It's the first time I've used it. I think I got it on Amazon, so I'll try and link it. This is also a cut saw bit. It's a lot more narrow, and I'm thinking it's going to be better for a little bit of refinement of these curves on this deadwood. So I'm going to switch over to that, do a little bit more polishing on the deadwood, and then probably call it a day. Well, quite a transition for this Fraser Fir in just an hour. Those drill bits sure did their job, and I think the Deadwood is somewhat convincing. Pretty happy with it. Happy to get rid of that foliage so that now the root system can prioritize the actual canopy and part of the tree that I want to keep long term. And I think this was a necessary step as part of my quote-unquote plan that I made 4 years ago. Obviously, I've got to do some wiring, bring these branches down to be more convincing as far as like a snow-loaded tree goes. And I know that this transition of taper in here, this big piece to start off to the right, transitioning over to this piece going to your left, is not convincing at all. So I know I've got to grow these branches out 2-3 feet tall so that this area thickens up and it's a smoother move off to the left. That is bonsai. That's what I've got to do. So I'm going to be doing that over the next several years. But for now, I'm pretty satisfied with how this looks. Once I do some wiring, probably next spring on these branches, I think it's going to start to look a lot more like an actual bonsai tree. And of course, once I get this dawn redwood taken out of the pot itself as well. So I'd love to hear from you on what you think. Would you have not removed that entire section of pom-pom-like foliage in the top right-hand corner? Do you think I'm nuts for using power tools on a tree? And what would you do differently with the design of the tree as it is now? So this was a fun one. I'm glad you could join, and I'd love to hear from you on what you think. I'll catch you next time, everybody.